going behind the scenes where new firefighter recruits go to train, exploring a place called Dead Man's Hollow and checking out the Liberty Tunnel with Boaz Frankel. When he's not joining us on PTL, he creates videos for Next Pittsburgh's Yinzer Backstage Pass. One of my favorite segments to have you join us.
Gosh, thanks so much, Heather. I appreciate it.
This is always a blast because you really get the inside scoop on what's going on in the city and beyond.
Although I feel like with the one of them we're talking about today, you're going to have even more of an inside scoop, potentially.
Perhaps. So you went to the Highland Park Fire Training Academy.
Yes.
Tell us about this.
Well, I'd always driven by there and you see that weird tower that's up there and the fake house and you're like, what are they just lighting that on fire every day? What are they doing? And so, I mean, I assume Frankie went to school there pretty much.
Yeah, that's where I think that's they just call it the academy, and they go there for several months, and that's where they do a lot of their training.
That's wild. You're right. So here you see one of the sort of normal classrooms. This looks like a classroom, but then the wild thing is that their other classrooms are like this.
Yes.
You know, so they've got this. When I was there, they were doing hazmat training. So they were like, this is like, okay, what if there's a weird gas coming out of things? Or what if there's like a tanker that falls over on the highway and there's like flammable stuff coming out? So they're in all these situations. And then they have these maze rooms, which I can only imagine Frankie would come back freaked out when he was doing this stuff.
Any firefighter will tell you, when you watch on TV shows or in movies, you can see everything. And he said it's not like that at all. It's so scary because it is pitch black. So you're trying to feel your way through a stranger's home to rescue, to put out the fire.
Right, and then to simulate that, they have these rooms where they can move all the walls, and so every day you'd go in there and they'd fill it full of smoke, and you'd even maybe be wearing goggles so you can't see, and you have to feel your way out of that thing.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
So are you glad you chose the profession you did? Because I know when I did the fire training academy, I was like, I'm glad that I'm not doing this. It takes a special person.
Yeah.
It really does.
I mean, and all the medical stuff. It's like, you also were an EMT. It's wild. Yeah.
And you also stopped by Dead Man's Hollow.
Yes. Had you heard of this place?
No, I haven't.
So it's funny. It was 4 people in a week had said, do you think about Dead Man's Hollow? I didn't know it existed. So right now, if you go there, it's a beautiful natural space. It's right off the Gap Trail. But it has this crazy industrial history. So yeah, now it looks like a beautiful forest, but then there's all these industrial ruins. So in the 1800s, there was this brick factory there. That burned down, and then there was a sewage pipe factory, which is just so hard to imagine, this huge building in the middle of this beautiful forest now. But still, all around, you'll see these chunks of sewer pipe fragments that they'll, that are littered across the ground. But now it's sort of like the nature's reclaiming it. There are trees growing out of the ruins, and
look at this.
Yeah, there's
it's kind of magical in a way, even to see the walls with graffiti on them.
So cool. And I think, they don't encourage you to do graffiti, but I think they just know that's something that happens. So folks are always in there tagging it. And it is very cool. Feels like you should shoot a music video or something there.
It's very cool. You also got to see inside the Liberty Tunnel, specifically the ventilation shaft.
Yeah, it's
I'm not sure that I would put my finger on.
Part.
Oh yeah, but where is it in the tunnel?
Well, so when they built the tunnel, it opened in 1924, and people were still figuring out cars. So a few months into it, there's a traffic jam, and everyone starts passing out in the tunnel from carbon monoxide poisoning. Because there is the gas, it's a mile long, and the gas is just staying in there.
It is a very long tunnel.
Yeah, it's the longest one in Pittsburgh, I think, longest automobile tunnel in Pittsburgh. And so they had to make these shafts, so 300 feet above, they shafted it up, and then there's 200-foot tower on top of that. And so they suck the carbon monoxide out of it. And I loved these doors. So I was like, what's behind that door? And he's like, it just goes 300 feet down to the tunnel. That's why we have that bar in front of it.
So that you don't, because then you would just...
Yeah, you just...
You don't want to open that door.
They have to rappel down to check it out. But I was like, why is there a big thing? It's like, well...
When you're driving through, almost any tunnel in Pittsburgh, there are doors all over the sides, and I want to just go through them because I want to see what's behind them.
Well, here's the disappointing thing. The doors just go to the other side of the tunnel. Oh. There's not an in-between space. It just goes from inbound to outbound. Yeah, I was bummed about that too.
Now I'm bummed.
Yeah, well, here's a bonus fact. There used to be a jail in there too. If someone was causing trouble in the tunnel, they could keep them in the jail temporarily. That hasn't been there for decades.
Yeah, I wonder who would be causing trouble in the tunnel.
Deer, raccoon.
Alcosan, you also stopped by.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens when you flush a toilet at KDKA? Well, it goes to Alcosan under sort of near the McKees Rock Bridge, this huge facility. And it was,
now you know.
I didn't know what they'd let us see, and they let us see everything. So
really?
This is the wet well. It's 100 feet deep, and it's been, since it opened in the 50s, it's never been turned off because there's nowhere else for this stuff to go.
Yeah.
And so that's me peering into it, and you essentially see a tube. So this is what the wet well looks like, first of all. And I guess there's always 60 feet of sewage in there. And that's, whatever's coming out of from your toilet in the Pittsburgh area.
Lovely.
Is going into this thing. And then it goes to these various stages. This is a sewage, like a big sewage sort of facility where it sits and settles. And so the wild thing is they don't add a lot of chemicals. It's really all gravity and bacteria that does all this. This is sort of what you'd imagined it looking like.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're not grossing anybody out today.
What was it? I'm almost afraid to ask you how bad the smell was, but
way less bad
you
than
thought.
I thought. And they were like, in a couple decades ago, 2 decades ago, they did something where they're like sucking the air out in a special way so it smells less bad. But here's the wild thing. Okay, so from the moment sewage arrives on site, guess how long it is until that, water goes back into the river?
I'm afraid. 2 days?
10 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And the wild thing is, and I don't know if this is speaking more about our rivers, but the water they're sending into the river is cleaner than the other river water.
Yeah. So interesting. Boaz, I'm always fascinated. This is why I love this segment so much and what you're doing with Next Pittsburgh.
Gosh, thanks, Heather. I
for
appreciate
coming
it.
in. Well, if you're interested in checking out the Yinzer Backstage Pass, we're going to have a link on our website at kdka.com/talkpittsburgh. Coming up on the show, veterans returning home with nightmares, flashbacks, and depression are seeking out psychedelics for help. We're talking about the push to legalize the therapy across the country when we come back.